The soldier died quietly, which surprised Cassandra Thornwell more than the violence of his wound. She knelt in mud that smelled of iron and rain, her hands pressed against the gash in his abdomen, watching his eyes fix on something beyond the forest canopy. No screaming, no begging, just the slow drain of life from a body that had given everything it had. She had seen death before. Her father had made sure of that. Colonel Thornwell believed his daughter should understand the cost of war, not just its glory. So she had walked battlefields with him, learned to read the difference between wounds that could be saved and those that were merely delays before the inevitable. This was inevitable. The vision hit her as the soldier's last breath rattled out. Not a dream, not imagination. Intelligence, raw and unfiltered, crashing through her mind like cavalry through broken lines. Silver weapons gleaming in torchlight. Eastern border, the old stone markers. 3 days from now, maybe 4. Men in leather armor moving through darkness, their faces hidden but their intent clear as morning light. And threading through it all, a symbol she had seen before in fragments of other visions. A raven clutching thorns in its talons, rendered in silver on dark cloth. Betrayal from within. Cassandra pulled her hands away from the dead soldier, his blood cooling against her palms. She sat back on her heels and breathed through the nausea that always followed the visions. Around her, the forest was quiet except for the drip of rain from oak leaves and the distant call of a crow. She opened the leather journal she kept tied to her belt and recorded the vision with methodical precision. Date, time, location of the body, details of what she had seen, the silver weapons, the raven and thorns, the sense of coordination, of planning, of something larger than random violence. 23rd accurate vision this year. The village council would call it witchcraft if they knew. They already whispered about her, about the madness that had taken her mother and now infected the daughter. But Cassandra knew better. Patterns existed to be recognized. Information won wars as surely as steel. The visions were not curse, they were advantage. She stood, wiping her hands on her cloak, and began the walk back to Thornhaven. The village sat in a valley between 2 hills, small and unremarkable, the kind of place that history forgot unless history needed bodies for its wars. Smoke rose from chimneys into gray sky. Somewhere a dog barked. Life continued, ignorant of the soldier bleeding out in the forest, ignorant of the visions that plagued the colonel's strange daughter. Cassandra passed the smithy on her way home. The blacksmith's son, Peter, was working the bellows, his face flushed from heat and effort. He saw her and looked away quickly, focusing on his work with sudden intensity. She remembered when he had wanted to marry her. That was before she had saved his life with a vision, before she had grabbed his arm and pulled him back from the forge, just as a crucible cracked and sprayed molten iron across the exact spot where he had been standing. Before he had looked at her with gratitude that curdled into fear when he realized she had known it would happen. He had called her witch and run. The village had agreed with him. Better to be called witch than to watch a good man burn, she thought. But the label had stuck, and with it came isolation that wrapped around her like winter fog. Her house stood at the edge of the village, small and solitary. Inside, it smelled of herbs and old leather, of the books her father had collected and the weapons he had maintained with religious care. Cassandra hung her cloak by the door and went to the basin to wash the soldier's blood from her hands. She caught her reflection in the polished copper mirror above the basin. Gray eyes looked back at her, steady and measuring. Her father's eyes, her hair, pale blonde, hung loose around her shoulders. She was not beautiful by village standards. Too angular, too serious, too much her father's daughter in a world that preferred women soft and silent. She dried her hands and went to the shelf where her father's war journal sat. She had placed it there after his funeral, unable to bury it with him, unable to let go of his words. Now she took it down and opened it to the final entry, written the night before he died. The handwriting was her father's, bold and certain even when discussing surrender. War with Lycans ends today. We sign treaty in blood. 8 brides, 8 kingdoms, 1 every generation to maintain the peace. The Wolf King demands tribute, and we give it because we are tired, because we have lost too many sons, because even victory would cost more than we can afford to pay. My Cassandra is young still. Pray she is never chosen. These wolves respect only strength, and humans are prey to them no matter what treaties we sign. I die tomorrow. Not in battle, but in bed, from wounds that festered because I was too proud to admit I needed help. Typical. I leave my daughter my knowledge and my regrets. May she use the first and avoid the second. Colonel Richard Thornwell retired. Cassandra closed the journal and held it against her chest. 15 years since his death. 15 years since she had watched them lower him into ground that was too cold, too final. He had taught her everything. Tactics, strategy, field medicine, how to read terrain and weather and the hearts of men, how to survive. He had not taught her how to live without him. A knock at the door pulled her from memory. She set the journal down and answered it to find the village elder standing in the rain, his face grave with the weight of bad news delivered often enough to become routine. "The lottery," he said without preamble. "Tomorrow at dawn, all unmarried women of age." Cassandra felt her stomach tighten. The bride selection. 30 years since the last one, which meant it was time again to pay the tribute that kept the Lycans from descending on their villages with teeth and claws. "I'm not eligible," she said. "The law requires women of good character and sound mind." The elder looked uncomfortable. "The law requires 8 brides. 7 families have volunteered their daughters. We need 1 more." Understanding came slowly, then all at once. "No one else will volunteer." "Would you? Sent to live among monsters, claimed by their king, transformed into gods know what?" The elder shook his head. "We need 8. The treaty is explicit." "So you draw lots from the unmarried women, and hope you don't draw me." "Cassandra," the elder's voice held something like pity. "Everyone hopes they don't draw you." She should have been angry. Instead, she felt only cold calculation. If the lottery was rigged, and it surely was, then her name would be called. The unwanted daughter of a dead soldier, the witch with visions, the woman no man would marry. The village would sacrifice her without hesitation. "Dawn," she repeated. The elder nodded and left, hurrying back into the rain toward the warm lights of the village center where normal people lived normal lives. Cassandra closed the door and returned to her father's journal. She had 1 night to prepare, 1 night to decide whether to run or to stand her ground and face whatever came. She thought of the vision, silver weapons, eastern border, betrayal from within. She thought of her father's words, "Intelligence wins wars, not just strength." And she thought of the village that feared her, the blacksmith's son who had run from her, the life that had never quite fit, no matter how she tried to reshape herself into something acceptable. Perhaps among monsters she would finally find a place to stand. She packed a small bag with essentials, her father's journal, clean clothes, medical supplies, the silver pendant her mother had worn, a wolf with amber eyes that caught firelight and gleamed like prophecy. When dawn came, she was ready. The village square filled slowly as gray light crept over the hills. 7 young women stood in their finest dresses, their families surrounding them with tears and pride. These were the volunteers, the chosen ones, the daughters who would save their villages through sacrifice that might be noble or might be horror, depending on which stories you believed about the Lycans. Cassandra stood apart in her traveling clothes, practical and plain. No family surrounded her. No one wept for her potential loss. The elder brought out a wooden box and made a show of placing 8 folded papers inside. 7 bore names of the volunteers. 1 was supposedly random selection from the remaining eligible women. Cassandra knew which paper bore her name before he drew it. "Cassandra Thornwell," the elder announced, his relief barely concealed. The volunteers and their families looked at her with expressions ranging from pity to contempt. One mother pulled her daughter closer, as if madness might be contagious. The merchant's daughter, lovely in blue silk, whispered something to her sister that made them both laugh. Let them laugh. Cassandra had learned long ago that underestimation was its own kind of advantage. "The brides will depart at midday," the elder continued. "The Lycan delegation arrives to collect their tribute and escort them to Iron Peak Realm." Tribute. The word tasted like ash, but Cassandra swallowed it down with all the other indignities she had learned to endure. She spent the morning at her father's grave. The headstone was simple, just his name and rank. Colonel Richard Thornwell. No dates, no flowery epitaphs. He would have approved. "I'm leaving," she told the stone. "Going to live with the people who killed you. Or maybe I'm going to survive long enough to change things. I don't know yet. But I'm going with my eyes open." The stone offered no answer, but she felt steadier for having spoken. At noon, the Lycan delegation arrived. They came with military precision, not the chaotic raid the villagers half expected. 40 warriors on horseback, their armor dark leather reinforced with steel, their weapons visible but not drawn. They moved in formation, disciplined and alert, scanning the village with eyes that missed nothing. At their head rode a woman, tall and broad-shouldered, her auburn hair pulled back in a warrior's braid. She dismounted with fluid grace and approached the elder. "I am Rowan, captain of the King's Guard. You have the tribute?" The elder gestured to the 8 women standing in the square. Rowan's gaze swept over them, professional and assessing. When her eyes landed on Cassandra, they lingered for a moment longer than the others. "This one," Rowan said, pointing at Cassandra. "She's different." The elder shifted nervously. "She was drawn by lot. All are offered freely according to the treaty." "Freely." Rowan's tone suggested she knew exactly how free the choice had been. "Mount up. We have 5 days' travel ahead." The villagers loaded the brides into covered wagons, except Cassandra. Rowan pointed her toward a separate carriage, smaller and more isolated. "You ride here," Rowan said. Cassandra climbed in without argument. Inside, the carriage was comfortable but clearly designed for one passenger. No companionship on this journey. No chance to bond with the other brides or gather intelligence from shared fear. Isolation. Whether it was honor or surveillance, she could not yet tell. The caravan moved out with the same precision it had arrived. Cassandra watched her village disappear through the small window, watched the only home she had ever known become memory and distance. She felt no sadness, only the cold clarity that came with cutting ties that had never been strong enough to hold. Ahead lay unknown territory. Behind lay nothing worth returning to. Forward then, always forward. The first 2 days of travel passed in watchful silence. Cassandra observed everything. The guard rotations changed every 4 hours. The formations adjusted based on terrain. Scouts rode ahead in pairs with horn signals for communication. This was not escort. This was military operation moving through potentially hostile territory. They expected attack. The other brides, visible through gaps in the wagon covers when the caravan stopped, spent their time in tears or prayers or nervous chatter. Cassandra spent hers taking notes, troop numbers, equipment, supplies, the rhythm of military life that her father had taught her to read, like other girls read romance. On the 3rd day, Rowan rode alongside Cassandra's carriage and spoke through the window. "You're not like the others." Cassandra looked up from her journal. "No, you should be terrified." "Should I?" Rowan's expression was difficult to read. 7 brides before you, all dead within a year. The king's curse, they call it. Every generation he claims a bride and transformation kills her. Transformation into what? Hybrid, half human, half Lycan. The claiming bond changes you. Most can't survive it. Cassandra absorbed this information with the same calm she had absorbed news of her father's death. Fear was just data. It told you where the danger lived so you could plan around it. "Why tell me this?" she asked. "Because you deserve to know what you're walking into. The others were told pretty lies about becoming queens and living in luxury. You?" Rowan shook her head. "You look like someone who values truth over comfort." "I do." "Then here's truth. The king doesn't want a bride. He wants something else. I don't know what. But 7 women have died trying to give it to him. Maybe you'll be the 8th. Or maybe I'll be the first to survive." Rowan almost smiled. "You're either very brave or very stupid." "Calculated risk," Cassandra replied. "Not the same as either." The captain rode ahead without responding, but something in her posture suggested approval. That night, camped in a forest clearing, Cassandra lay awake in her carriage and listened to the sounds of military camp, sentries walking perimeter, horses shifting, low conversations in a language she did not speak but recognized as tactical coordination. A vision tried to surface, triggered by stress and proximity to danger. She pushed it down, not ready to lose control in enemy territory. Later, when she had privacy and could record it properly, she thought about her father, about the war he had fought against these same Lycans, about the peace that had cost him his life, slowly, through wounds that festered because he was too proud to admit weakness, about the daughter he had left behind, trained like a soldier but living like a ghost. Perhaps this was fate. Perhaps this was choice. The line between them had always been blurry for Cassandra. Dawn of the 4th day brought the attack Cassandra had been expecting. She was awake before the first arrow struck. Some instinct, some battlefield sense inherited from her father, pulled her from sleep seconds before chaos erupted. Shouts, the sound of steel on steel, horses screaming, the unmistakable chaos of ambush. Cassandra grabbed her bag and pushed open the carriage door. Outside, the forest had come alive with violence. Men in dark leather, faces covered, were engaged with the Lycan guards, not random bandits. These moved with coordination, with purpose. Hunters. The other brides were screaming from their wagon, trapped and terrified. Cassandra ran toward them, keeping low, using terrain the way her father had taught her. A fallen guard's sword lay in the dirt. She grabbed it without thinking. The blade was heavier than she was used to, but weight was just physics. Leverage and momentum mattered more than strength. A hunter turned toward her, saw a woman in traveling clothes holding a sword she probably did not know how to use. His mistake. Cassandra did not try to fight him directly. She used the chaos, the confusion, the fact that he underestimated her. When he lunged, she sidestepped and used his momentum against him, exactly as her father had drilled into her during endless practice sessions. The hunter stumbled. She did not kill him, but she drove him back long enough to reach the wagon. "Get out!" she shouted to the brides. "Form up behind me! Stay tight!" They stared at her like she was mad. "Now!" Something in her voice, some echo of command learned from a colonel's daughter who had grown up on battlefields, cut through their panic. They scrambled out and clustered behind her in a terrified knot. Cassandra positioned them with their backs to the wagon, creating a defensive perimeter with their bodies. Not ideal, but better than scattered prey. A Lycan guard went down nearby, silver arrow through his throat. Silver. The metal that could kill them, that bypassed their supernatural healing. These hunters knew what they were doing. The battle swirled around Cassandra's small formation. She held her ground, using the sword not to attack, but to create space, to look dangerous enough that the hunters chose easier targets. Then hoofbeats, a massive shape moving through the chaos with lethal grace. The Lycan King had arrived. Cassandra saw him clearly for the first time. Tall, broader than any human had right to be, with dark hair and features that might have been handsome if they were not currently twisted in controlled fury. He moved through the fight like a storm-given form, each motion economical and devastating. He killed 3 hunters in the time it took Cassandra's heart to beat 5 times. Then he saw her standing with sword raised, protecting the huddled brides, blood on her traveling clothes, and determination in her gray eyes. Their gazes locked. Something passed between them, recognition, though they had never met, understanding, though no words were spoken. The king's eyes widened fractionally. Then he was moving again, cutting through hunters with renewed intensity, driving them back into the forest. The attack ended as suddenly as it had begun. The surviving hunters melted away into the trees, leaving bodies and blood and the sharp smell of violence. Cassandra lowered her sword. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady when she spoke to the brides behind her. "You can breathe now." They collapsed in relief and tears. Cassandra remained standing, watching the Lycan guards regroup, count their dead, secure the perimeter. Rowan approached, blood on her armor, respect in her eyes. "You know how to fight. My father was Colonel Thornwell. I know how to not die." "Thornwell." The king's voice, deep and resonant, speaking her father's name with something that might have been recognition or might have been regret. He stood 10 paces away, close enough that Cassandra could see amber eyes studying her with unsettling intensity. "The human commander at Black Ridge Pass," she confirmed. "He killed 200 of my warriors with tactics I still teach to recruits. He died from wounds he got in that battle. Took him 15 years, but they killed him just the same." The king moved closer. Not threatening, but not casual either. Predator assessing potential threat or potential asset. Cassandra could not tell which. "And you're his daughter." "Yes." "Sent as bride by a village that fears you." Cassandra met his gaze without flinching. "You've done your intelligence work. I know everything about everyone who enters my territory. It's how I stay alive." He paused. "You organized the brides, created defensive formation, held position under fire. Basic tactics. Most brides would have hidden or run or died screaming. You fought. I told you I know how to not die." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "We'll see." The caravan reformed and continued, but now Cassandra rode at the front near the king, rather than isolated in the rear. Rowan had pointed her there without explanation, and Cassandra went without argument. She could feel eyes on her, the other brides watching with resentment or confusion, the Lycan guards with curiosity, and the king himself riding ahead but somehow always aware of exactly where she was. As sunset painted the sky red and gold, they made camp in a cleared space that spoke of regular use. Fortified positions, clear sight lines, defensive advantages. Cassandra helped set up her tent, declining offers of assistance, preferring to understand the camp layout through direct action rather than observation alone. When full dark fell, the king approached her fire. "Walk with me," he said. Not a request, not quite a command, something in between that assumed compliance. Cassandra stood and followed him to the edge of camp, where trees gave way to a cliff overlooking a valley. Below, pinpricks of light marked civilization. "Still 2 days' travel," Rowan had said. "Do you know why I chose you?" the king asked. "I assume because you recognize something. I'm here because I refused to die in that village. Everything else is just tactics." He almost smiled. "You really are Thornwell's daughter." "You've said that before." "Because it matters. Your father was the best human commander I ever faced. Brilliant tactician, stubborn as mountain stone. He could have won that war if his own side had not undermined him with politics." Cassandra felt old anger stir. They blamed him for the losses, called him reckless. He was aggressive, not the same thing, but humans value caution over victory. The king turned to face her fully. "I need to tell you something. The claiming tomorrow is not marriage. It's transformation. You'll become hybrid, half human, half Lycan. Enhanced senses, strength, healing, mental link to me." "And the 7 brides before me?" "Dead. All of them. The transformation killed some. Others went mad from sensory overload. One lasted 6 months before—" He trailed off. "Before what?" "Before she was assassinated." Cassandra absorbed this. "So I'm walking into death or madness or murder?" "Yes. Why tell me?" "Because you deserve to know what you're choosing. The others were told comfortable lies. You value truth." He paused. "If you refuse, I'll send you home with gold enough to live comfortably. You can walk away." Cassandra looked out at the distant lights. Somewhere down there was a kingdom built by warriors, a place where strength mattered more than conformity, where her visions might be valued instead of feared, or a place where she would die like the 7 before her. "I choose to stay," she said. "Why?" "Because I'm pragmatic. In my village, I was a freak. Here, maybe my abilities have value. You say you'll protect me. I don't fully believe you, but I believe in my own ability to survive." The king studied her for a long moment. "You're different from the others." "So I've been told." "I recognized you. When I saw you in the square, when you stood with that sword protecting the brides, I knew you." "Impossible, we've never met." "Not in this life." His voice dropped lower. "I've lived 600 years. I've seen your face before. Different names, different villages, always the same gray eyes. 7 times I found you, 7 times you died." Cassandra felt cold certainty settle in her bones. "You think I'm reincarnation? I think fate keeps bringing you back, and I think someone keeps killing you before whatever we're meant to accomplish gets accomplished." "That's insane." "Yes." He met her gaze. "But you have visions of things that haven't happened yet. You see patterns normal humans miss. Your mother had the same gift, and her mother before her. You're seer, and I'm a 600-year-old wolf who remembers every life you've lived and died." He gestured toward the lights below. "Tomorrow we arrive. You'll be presented to my court. They'll test you, challenge you, try to prove you unworthy. If you survive that, the claiming happens. And if you survive transformation, then we figure out who's been killing you and why." "You're asking me to trust you." "I'm asking you to survive. That's what you do best, isn't it?" Cassandra looked at him, really looked, saw a warrior who had lived centuries, saw burden and loneliness and grim determination, saw someone who understood duty and sacrifice because he had built his existence on both, saw perhaps an ally. "I'll survive," she said. "Not for you, not for fate, for me, because I choose to." "Good." The king turned back toward camp. "Get rest. Tomorrow you meet Iron Peak, and Iron Peak does not suffer weakness." Cassandra remained at the cliff's edge after he left, watching distant lights and thinking about fathers and daughters, about wars and peace, about the strange pattern of her life that had led her from a colonel's tent to a village square to a cliff overlooking Wolf Kingdom. Her hand found her mother's pendant, the wolf with amber eyes warm against her palm. Perhaps this was always where she was meant to be. Perhaps choice and fate were not opposites, but partners in a dance she was only beginning to understand. Or perhaps she was walking into death with her eyes open and calling it strategy. Tomorrow would tell. She returned to her tent and lay down fully clothed, sword within reach, always prepared, always ready. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, she dreamed not of death, but of amber eyes and a voice that called her name across lifetimes. The final day of travel dawned cold and clear. The caravan descended from mountain passes into valleys where civilization grew denser. Villages gave way to towns. Towns gave way to something larger, Iron Peak rose before them like a promise or a threat, not a city, a fortress that had grown into city over centuries of war and peace and war again. Walls 40 feet high, dark stone that seemed to drink in sunlight rather than reflect it. Towers at intervals, each topped with war machines Cassandra recognized from her father's diagrams. Trebuchets, ballistas, defensive positions that could rain destruction on any army foolish enough to attack. But it was also beautiful. Banners flying in mountain wind, architecture that combined human craft with something wilder, more organic. Gardens visible behind walls, green life thriving in carefully tended spaces. War and peace held in tension. The gates opened as they approached. No ceremony, just efficient military operation. The caravan entered through streets wide enough for troop movements, past buildings that were barracks and homes and shops all at once. Citizens stopped to watch the brides pass. Cassandra studied them in return. Tall, most of them. Athletic. Eyes that reflected light strangely, amber or gold or green. Lycan, all of them, or mostly Lycan with human blood mixed in somewhere generations back. They did not look friendly. They looked curious, skeptical, vaguely hostile. Fair enough. Cassandra had not expected welcome. The caravan stopped at a massive structure that could only be the palace, or fortress. The distinction seemed meaningless here, where every building was built for both beauty and defense. Rowan dismounted and opened Cassandra's carriage door personally. "Welcome to Iron Peak," she said. "Try not to die in the first hour." Cassandra stepped out into mountain air that smelled of pine and smoke and something wilder she could not name. The other brides were being led away by attendants toward comfort and preparation for tomorrow's ceremony. No one came for Cassandra. The king appeared at her side, moving with the silence that 600 years of hunting taught. "The others will be pampered and prepared," he said. "You come with me." He led her not to guest chambers, but to the heart of the palace, through corridors lined with tapestries depicting battles and hunts, past guards who bowed to their king and studied his companion with barely concealed curiosity. They arrived at massive doors carved with wolves running beneath full moon. The king pushed them open. Beyond lay a war room. Cassandra recognized it immediately. The maps, the markers representing troop positions, the smell of leather and steel and strategy. Her father's world recreated in Wolf Kingdom. Around a table made from single massive tree trunk stood the king's advisors. Cassandra assessed them with military eye. An older Lycan, scarred and grim. General, clearly. The way he held himself spoke of battles won through experience and ruthless efficiency. A woman, perhaps 50 in human years, with calculating eyes and posture that suggested danger despite civilian clothes. Spy master. An elderly human in priest's robes, out of place but comfortable, the treaty keeper. And a younger Lycan woman, beautiful and cold, watching Cassandra with undisguised hostility. The king gestured toward Cassandra. "My advisors. General Aldrich Ironfang, my second in command. Elena Ashwood, head of intelligence. Father Dominic, keeper of treaties and histories. And Lady Vivian Blackthorn, who leads the noble faction." To them, he said simply, "Cassandra Thornwell, Colonel Thornwell's daughter, 8th bride, and possibly the first to survive long enough to matter." Aldrich's eyebrows rose. "Thornwell's daughter? The Thornwell who killed 200 of us at Blackridge?" "The same," Cassandra said, meeting his gaze. "He taught me everything he knew before those wounds killed him." "And now you're here as tribute." Vivian's voice dripped contempt. "How convenient." "I was drafted by lottery, not my choice. But I'm here now, and I plan to make the best of it." "The best of becoming hybrid?" Vivian laughed. "Most don't survive transformation." "Then I'll be more careful than they were." The king moved to the map table. "Enough. Cassandra is here because she has tactical mind and visions that provide intelligence. The claiming tomorrow will enhance both. We need every advantage." "Why?" Cassandra asked. Aldrich tapped the eastern border on the map. "Because 3 kingdoms are massing troops. Because we've had 7 incursions this month. Because someone is preparing for war." Cassandra moved closer to the map, studying it with practiced eye. Her vision from days ago surfaced in memory. Silver weapons, eastern border, betrayal symbol, the raven and thorns. "The eastern buildup is bait," she said quietly. 5 pairs of eyes fixed on her. "Explain," the king commanded. Cassandra traced the map with one finger. "Too visible. They want you to reinforce east. Real attack comes from west, through the mountain pass you think is impassable." "Based on what intelligence?" Aldrich demanded. Vision and analysis. My father used this exact feint at Black Ridge Pass. It worked. You lost 200 warriors because you reinforced the wrong position. Silence fell across the war room. Aldrich's face was unreadable. That was 15 years ago. Tactics don't age, Cassandra replied. Neither do patterns. They're testing you, seeing if you've learned. If you reinforce east, they know you're predictable. If you split forces, you weaken both positions. Either way, they learn something valuable. And what would you do? Elena asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. I'd make them commit to the feint, appear to reinforce east heavily, hide real forces in the western mines. When they attack through the pass, collapse the mines. Bury their vanguard, cut off their retreat, destroy their confidence. That's brutal, Vivian said. That's war. Cassandra looked up from the map. You don't win by being nice. You win by being smarter and more ruthless than your enemy. The king was watching her with something that might have been approval or might have been calculation. Sound strategy. Elena spoke thoughtfully. There's old file in my archives. Human captain named Torres served alongside the previous king. His daughter was one of the brides. Bride number 4, I think. Torres disappeared 50 years ago after she died. Body never recovered. What happened to his daughter? Cassandra asked. Isabeau Torres. Lasted 6 months after claiming. Assassinated in her sleep. Elena's eyes narrowed. Silver dagger through the heart. Same method used on the others. Pattern, Cassandra said. Someone's been killing brides systematically. For centuries, Father Dominic added quietly. And if Torres survived, if he's been leading this conspiracy, then we're fighting an enemy who knows how we think, the king finished. An enemy with personal vendetta and 50 years to plan. The pieces were falling into place. Cassandra filed the information away for later analysis. Father Dominic spoke for the first time directly to her, his voice gentle. You carry great burden for one so young. I carry what I must, same as everyone in this room. The priest smiled slightly. You'll do well here, I think, if you survive. I plan to. The king gestured toward the door. Rowan will show you to your chambers. Rest. Tomorrow you face the court. They'll test you. Prepare accordingly. Cassandra bowed, not servile, but acknowledging command from superior officer. Then she followed Rowan out of the war room, leaving the advisors to their strategy and their doubts. As they walked through corridors, Rowan spoke quietly. That was bold, challenging their tactics in your first hour. Was it wrong? No, that's what makes it bold. Aldrich hates being wrong more than he hates humans. You made an enemy. I made an impression. Whether that becomes alliance or enmity depends on tomorrow. Rowan stopped at a door. These are your chambers. Lock from inside. Don't open for anyone but me or the king. Expecting trouble? Always. This is Iron Peak. We're always at war or preparing for war. You're outsider, potential threat. Some will test you with words, others with blades. Good to know. Rowan studied her for a moment. You're not afraid. Fear is just data. It tells me where danger lives so I can plan around it. You sound like him, the king. He's been alive so long he's forgotten how to be afraid. Rowan paused. Don't make his mistake. Fear keeps you alive. Then I'll be appropriately afraid while acting strategically brave. This time Rowan did smile. You're strange. I like you. Try not to die. She left Cassandra alone in chambers that were comfortable but not luxurious. Bed, desk, window overlooking training yards where warriors drilled with lethal precision. Everything she needed, nothing she did not. Cassandra set her bag down and went to the window. Below, Lycans sparred and trained, preparing for wars that might come or might already be here. She watched their movements, analyzing patterns, understanding that she stood at the edge of something larger than bride tribute or treaty obligation. She stood at the precipice of transformation. Tomorrow she would become weapon or corpse or something in between. Her hand found her mother's pendant. The wolf with amber eyes, watching over her as it had watched over her mother and grandmother before her. 3 generations of women with visions. 3 generations of seers. Perhaps they had all been walking toward this moment. Perhaps this was always the destination. Cassandra turned from the window and began to prepare. Not for ceremony or romance or the comfortable lies brides told themselves. She prepared for battle, because that was what tomorrow would be, no matter what they called it. And she planned to survive. Dawn came too quickly, as it always did before battle. Cassandra had learned that truth from her father. The night before combat stretched long and sleepless. But morning arrived with cruel efficiency, regardless of readiness. She rose and dressed in the clothes Rowan had left outside her door. Not the ceremonial gown she expected, but practical garments in dark leather and midnight blue, sturdy boots, belt for weapons. This was not costume for pageantry, but uniform for trials. Good. She braided her hair back in the military style her father had taught her, efficient and secure. No loose strands to obscure vision or provide handholds for enemies. She checked her knife, small but well-balanced, and slipped it into her boot. The door opened without her touching it. Rowan stood in the corridor, armored and grim. The court assembles. Time to prove you belong or prove you don't. Cassandra followed her through passages that grew wider and more ornate as they approached the great hall. Tapestries depicting battles lined the walls, ancient victories, old wars, the history of a people who had survived through strength when diplomacy failed. The Great Hall of Iron Peak was not designed for romance or ceremony. It was tribunal chamber, war council, and throne room merged into single space that spoke of power consolidated and maintained through competence. Vaulted ceiling disappeared into shadow above. Stone pillars carved like ancient trees supported balconies where more Lycans gathered. At the far end, raised on a dais of dark granite, sat two thrones, one occupied by the king in formal armor of black and silver, one empty, waiting. For her, presumably, if she survived. The other 7 brides stood to one side with their new Lycan husbands, dressed in silk and jewels, looking like ornaments. They watched Cassandra enter in her combat leathers with expressions ranging from pity to confusion to smug satisfaction. Let them think what they wanted. Cassandra had not come here to be decoration. The king's advisors flanked the thrones, Aldrich in full military regalia, hand resting on sword hilt, Elena in shadow, watching everything, Father Dominic in his priest's robes, face serene, Vivienne in noble finery, beautiful and cold as winter morning. And throughout the hall, hundreds of Lycans, warriors, nobles, common citizens, all gathered to witness this testing of the unwanted bride. Cassandra walked to the center of the hall and stood alone in the circle of judgment. The marble floor beneath her feet was stained with age and use. How many had stood here before? How many had passed or failed whatever trials this court demanded? The king's voice rang out, formal and commanding. By treaty and tradition I have claimed my bride. By law and custom the court may challenge her worthiness. Let those who would test her step forward. Silence held for 3 heartbeats. Then Vivienne descended from the dais with predatory grace. I challenge. Her voice carried clearly through the hall. A queen must defend the realm. Let her prove she can fight. Murmurs rippled through the assembled Lycans. This was expected then. Traditional. Cassandra met Vivienne's gaze steadily. I'm not Lycan. I'll lose any physical contest. Exactly, Vivienne smiled without warmth. From his throne, the king spoke. The challenge is unfair. Cassandra interrupted before he could continue. I accept, but I choose weapons and terms. Vivienne's smile faltered. You can't dictate conditions. Dueling law, Cassandra replied. Challenged party selects implements of combat, or are you afraid to fight without claws? The trap closed. Vivienne could refuse and lose face before her entire faction, or accept and fight on terms she had not anticipated. Her eyes narrowed. State your terms. Wooden staffs, not claws. First blood, not death. Your strength advantage is significant. Surely that's enough. Vivienne's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Accepted. Servants brought the staffs, solid oak polished smooth, each as tall as Cassandra and thick as her wrist. She took hers and tested the weight, the balance. Not sword, but close enough. Leverage and momentum still applied. Physics did not care about supernatural strength. They circled each other in the cleared space. The hall fell silent except for breathing and the soft sound of boots on stone. Vivienne attacked first, relying on Lycan speed and power. The staff blurred toward Cassandra's head with force enough to shatter bone. Cassandra was not there when it arrived. She had learned young that you did not meet superior force with force. You redirected it, used it, made it work against itself. Vivienne's strike hit empty air. Her momentum carried her forward. Cassandra pivoted, using the staff to extend her reach, and struck at Vivienne's exposed knee. Not hard enough to injure seriously, just enough to destabilize. Vivian stumbled but recovered with inhuman speed. She spun, staff whistling in horizontal arc that would have broken ribs if it connected. Cassandra dropped low, feeling the wood pass inches above her head, and swept her own staff at Vivian's ankles. Contact. Vivian's feet went out from under her, but she twisted in midair, landed in crouch, and launched upward before Cassandra could press the advantage. They traded strikes, Cassandra giving ground steadily. She was slower, weaker, more limited, but she was also calculating, learning Vivian's patterns, seeing how Lycan confidence led to predictable attacks. Superior enemy? Extend the fight, tire them, wait for mistakes. Vivian was stronger but burned energy faster. Her strikes grew heavier but less controlled. Cassandra conserved her strength, using minimum movement for maximum effect. Then Vivian overcommitted to a downward strike. Cassandra sidestepped, bringing her staff up and across in technique drilled into muscle memory. The wood cracked against Vivian's temple. Not devastating, but enough. Blood welled from a small cut above Vivian's eye. First blood. Cassandra stepped back immediately, lowering her staff. Yield, you won. Vivian touched her forehead, fingers coming away red. Confusion crossed her face. What? First blood was yours to claim. I yielded before you could strike it. Cassandra met her eyes. The question was never if I could beat you. It was if I could hold my own long enough to prove I'm not helpless. Understanding dawned across the hall. Cassandra had fought a superior opponent to strategic draw, demonstrating competence without humiliating a powerful noble. Political victory disguised as martial defeat. Vivian's expression shifted from anger to grudging respect. Clever. Necessary. The crowd's murmur held a different tone now. Not approval exactly, but reassessment. The unwanted bride had tactical mind. Aldrich descended next, his scarred face impassive. Combat proves reflex. I test her mind. He gestured, and servants brought forward a table bearing a detailed map of Iron Peak and surrounding territories. Military markers indicated troop positions, supply lines, fortifications. You claim insight, Aldrich said. 3 kingdoms mass troops here, here, and here. He pointed to positions on the map. How do you respond? Cassandra studied the map, letting her vision sharpen and focus the way it did before prophetic sight emerged. The eastern buildup was too obvious. The northern positions were standard defensive, but the western approach through the mountain pass, the vision hit like cold water, silver weapons in darkness, the raven clutching thorns, symbols she had seen before. Eastern route as diversion, western mountains as killing ground. She steadied herself against the table, pushing through the disorientation that always followed the sight. This is trap, she said quietly. The eastern force is bait. Real attack comes from west, through the mountain pass you think is impassable in winter. Aldrich's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Based on what intelligence? Vision combined with analysis. Their eastern buildup is too visible. They want you to reinforce east. My father used this exact feint at Blackridge Pass. She met Aldrich's gaze. It worked. I was there, Aldrich said softly. I survived because I learned. What would you do if you were defending? Cassandra traced the map with one finger. I would not split forces. That weakens both positions. I would appear to reinforce east heavily while hiding real strength in the western mines. When they attack through the pass, collapse the mines, bury their vanguard, cut off their retreat, destroy their will to continue. Silence fell across the hall. That's brutal, someone whispered from the crowd. That's war, Cassandra replied without looking up from the map. You don't win by being merciful. You win by being smarter and more ruthless than your enemy. Aldrich studied her for a long moment. Then he bowed his head fractionally, warrior's acknowledgement of worthy opponent. The challenge is met. 2 down. How many more? Elena Ashwood glided forward from the shadows, her movements silent and deliberate. Spy master, the one who saw lies and read hearts. I challenge her honesty, Elena announced. I recognize liars. Let us see if the colonel's daughter speaks truth. She circled Cassandra slowly, predator assessing prey. Why are you really here, Cassandra Thornwell? Your father died fighting us. You should hate Lycans. Yet you stand here accepting claim from our king. Why? The question was, trap and test combined. Truth would reveal vulnerability. Lies would be detected. Cassandra chose truth because sometimes vulnerability was its own kind of armor. You want honesty? I'll give it. She turned to face Elena directly. "I hate that my father died. I hate that war took him and left me alone. But I hate more that his death changed nothing. 30 years later, we still eye each other across borders, still prepare for the next war, still sacrifice brides like currency." Her voice strengthened. "I'm here because I'm pragmatic. In my village I was freak, mad woman with visions nobody wanted. Here, maybe those visions have value. The king says he'll protect me. I don't fully believe him, but I believe in my own ability to survive." "You accept claim out of self-interest," Vivian said from the side, disapproval clear. "I accept claim because I choose to leverage it," Cassandra corrected. "I was unwanted in the human world. Perhaps I can be necessary here. You asked for truth. There it is. Lies are tactical tools I save for enemies." Elena's lips curved in something almost like smile. "Dangerous honesty. I like it." To the king, she said, "The challenge is met. She speaks truth, even when it costs her." 3 challenges passed. Cassandra felt tension coiling in her spine. What came next? Father Dominic stepped forward, his aged face kind but eyes sharp with intelligence that had outlasted generations. 3 challenges met. The claiming may proceed. His voice carried weight of centuries of tradition. But first, the bride must understand what she accepts. He turned to address the assembled court, though his words were clearly meant for Cassandra. The claiming is not marriage as humans understand it. It is blood oath, war pact. The bride becomes not wife, but war consort. She will share the king's strategic mind, his battles, his burdens, his enemies. Cassandra felt ice settle in her stomach. Weapon, not queen, not bride. Weapon. The king descended from his throne and approached her. Up close, she could see the weight of 6 centuries in his amber eyes, the burden of command worn like scars. "You need to understand," he said quietly, pitched for her ears alone, though the hall's acoustics meant everyone heard. "Transformation is not romantic. It's enhancement. You'll gain improved senses, strength, healing, mental link to me. But the cost is pain, and your perspective shifts. Emotions become calculated." "Meaning what?" "Meaning you'll see humans as assets or threats. Some call it clarity, others call it loss of humanity." His eyes searched hers. Previous brides couldn't reconcile the change. It broke them. Cassandra processed this information with the same clinical detachment she used for battlefield medicine. Fear was data. Pain was inevitable. The question was whether the tactical advantage justified the cost. "If I refuse?" she asked, though she already knew her answer. "You return home with gold, live normal life." "Normal life would kill me slowly, from boredom and wasted potential." She stepped closer, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I accept. Not because of destiny or fate, because it's the strategic choice." The king's expression shifted, something like relief flickering across his features. "Then let it be done." The ceremony that followed held no romance, no gentle words, no pretense of anything but what it was. Military oath binding soldier to commander through blood and pain. The king transformed before the assembled court, his human form flowing into something between man and beast. Massive, powerful, covered in dark fur with eyes that burned gold. Not monster, predator in its truest form. He cut his palm with one claw, blood welling dark and thick, offered it to her. Cassandra drank. The taste was copper and smoke and something wild that burned down her throat and spread heat through her veins. She felt it reach her heart and begin to change things at a level deeper than flesh. Then the king lowered his head to her neck and bit. Pain exploded white and absolute. Not the clean pain of a blade, but tearing, transforming agony that reached into her bones and unmade them. She heard herself scream, distant and unimportant, as her body began to rebuild itself into something new. Through the pain, visions crashed into her mind. Not her memories, but his. 600 years of battles and loss and lonely command. And threading through it all, 7 faces with her gray eyes, dying in his arms across centuries. Serafina, throat cut by silver blade. Elena, poisoned and bleeding. Isabeau, assassinated in her sleep. Sarah, Margaret, Catherine, Diana. 7 lives ended violently, each one after they had proven useful, after they had provided intelligence that won battles. Each one killed by the same signature, silver dagger marked with raven-clutching thorns. The vision clarified into certainty. They were not cursed, they were murdered, systematically, by someone who wanted the king weak and isolated. Then pain dragged her back to her own body, which was no longer entirely her own. Something fundamental had shifted, rewritten, enhanced and diminished simultaneously. When the king released her, she collapsed. Strong arms caught her before she hit the stone floor. His voice, now in her mind as well as her ears, steady and certain. "You survived the first part. Now comes the hard part." Darkness took her. She woke 3 days later in chambers she did not recognize. Silk sheets, soft bed, but also restraints on her wrists. Necessary, she understood dimly. During transformation, the newly changed often injured themselves or others in confusion and pain. Every sense was overwhelming. She could hear heartbeats in the corridor outside, smell fear and curiosity and calculation from guards posted at her door, see individual dust motes floating in shaft of sunlight. Too much, all of it too much. A figure moved in the shadows of the room. The king, watching from a chair he had clearly occupied for some time. "How long?" Her voice sounded strange, rougher than before. 3 days, longer than most. You fought the change harder." "Did I hurt anyone?" "Only yourself, and me once, when I tried to stop you from clawing at your own skin." He showed her his arm, 3 long scratches already healed to faint scars. "You're stronger than you were, faster. The mental link is established. Can you hear my thoughts?" Cassandra focused and felt it. Alien presence in her mind that was him. Not words exactly, but impressions, emotions, tactical assessments running constant beneath consciousness. Concern, relief, calculation of her combat potential, grim determination to keep her alive longer than the others. "I hear you," she said, "and you hear me. Everything. Your fear, your anger, your absolute refusal to surrender." Something like admiration colored his mental voice. "You're more resilient than I anticipated." Cassandra sat up slowly, testing her new body. Muscles responded differently, stronger but also strange. She felt disconnected, as if piloting a machine rather than inhabiting flesh. She looked at her own hands, saw tools, weapons, not the hands that had held her father's journal or touched her mother's pendant. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she filed it away as useful information. What happened while I was unconscious? The other brides completed their bonding ceremonies. No transformations for them, just symbolic claiming. They're settling into their new lives. He paused. There was incident on eastern border. 2 guards killed, their bodies found with silver poisoning. The vision, the raven and thorns. It was starting. "We need to investigate," Cassandra said, swinging her legs off the bed. The restraints had been released while she slept. "The pattern is repeating. You need to recover, learn to control your new abilities. I'll learn faster under pressure." She stood, swaying slightly but remaining upright. "Show me the bodies. I might see something useful." The king regarded her with expression she could not quite read. "You just underwent transformation that kills most people. You should be weak, disoriented, struggling to function. Instead, you want to investigate murders. Is that not what War Consort does?" He almost smiled. "It is exactly what War Consort does. Come then. Let's see what your enhanced senses reveal." They moved through this palace together, the king adjusting his pace to match hers, though she noticed he stayed within grabbing distance, in case her new strength betrayed her coordination. Guards they passed stared openly at Cassandra. Word had spread. The human bride had survived transformation. Unprecedented. Let them stare. She had work to do. The bodies lay in the palace morgue, cold room beneath the main structure where stone kept temperature low. 2 young males, Lycan warriors, laid out on slabs with their wounds visible and documented. Cassandra approached with clinical detachment that felt both foreign and familiar. Field medicine perspective combined with enhanced perception. "Silver arrows," she noted, studying the puncture wounds. "Through the throat. Quick death. Professional." "Agreed," Elena said, emerging from the shadows. The spy master had been studying the bodies as well. These were not random attacks. This was assassination. Cassandra leaned closer, letting her new senses expand. Smell was overwhelming. Dozens of scents layered over each other, but she forced herself to focus. Blood, stone, preservation herbs, and beneath it all, something else. Human scent. Recent. Not the guards who had transported the bodies, but someone who had been close to the dead warriors before they died. And mixed with that scent, fabric dye. Specific type she had smelled before. "Whoever killed them was human or mostly human," she said slowly, "and they wore cloth dyed with ironwood bark. That's expensive, noble quality." Elena's eyebrows rose. You can determine that from scent? Apparently. Cassandra straightened, filing away the information. The question is why nobles would be involved in border killings. Not our nobles, the king said grimly. Human nobles. Someone from the kingdoms paying tribute. The implications settled cold and certain. The brides were not just tribute. Some were spies, or some were covers for spies who traveled with them. We need to question the brides, Aldrich said, entering the morgue with his characteristic lack of ceremony. All of them. Find out who brought servants, who had visitors, who might have been compromised. Carefully, Cassandra cautioned. If we spook the wrong person, they'll run or go to ground. Better to watch and wait, see who makes mistakes. Speaking like spymaster already, Elena observed. The transformation enhanced more than just your senses. Perhaps it had. Cassandra felt her mind working differently, making connections faster, seeing patterns in information that would have taken hours to process before. Enhanced cognition, elevating tactical thinking to something approaching precognition. Or perhaps the visions and the enhanced mind were combining into something neither prophecy nor pure analysis, but synthesis of both. We watch the brides, the king decided. Elena, deploy your network. Aldrich, increase border patrols, but make it look routine. Cassandra, he turned to her. You train. Learn to use your new abilities. If there's a spy among the brides, they'll move against you next. You need to be ready. The training began that afternoon and continued with brutal intensity for the following weeks. Aldrich took personal responsibility for Cassandra's combat education, drilling her in techniques that exploited enhanced strength and speed while compensating for her relative inexperience. You're faster than human, he said, circling her in the training yard while other warriors watched. But you're slower than born Lycans. You need to be smarter. He attacked without warning, staff blurring toward her ribs. Cassandra, blocked on instinct, felt the impact jar through her arms with force that would have broken bones before transformation. Now it merely hurt. Better, Aldrich acknowledged. Again. They trained until her muscles screamed and sweat soaked her training leathers. Then they trained more. Aldrich was relentless, pushing her past exhaustion into the place where technique became instinct. Elena took over in the afternoons, teaching tradecraft and intelligence work, dead drops, code systems, how to read micro-expressions and detect lies, how to gather information from casual conversation. You have visions, Elena said during one lesson. That's intelligence asset, but visions are unreliable. You need human intelligence networks to support and verify. Cassandra absorbed everything, her enhanced mind processing and retaining information faster than before. She learned to induce visions deliberately, though it cost her in pain and temporary disorientation. Learned to filter sensory input, focusing on tactically relevant data while ignoring the overwhelming noise. Learned to think like weapon. Father Dominic taught her court politics in the evenings, explaining the factions and alliances that shaped Iron Peak. Aldrich's faction controls 40% of military, he explained over maps and charts. Traditionalists who value pure Lycan bloodlines. They tolerate you because you proved competent, but they don't trust Hybrid Queen. Vivian's nobles represent 30%, he continued. Younger generation who want war with humans. They see you as symbol of weakness. Elena's network is 20%. Pragmatists and half-breeds who care more about results than bloodlines. They're your natural allies. The remaining 10% are undecided. Your goal is to shift them toward alliance with the king. How? Cassandra asked. By being useful. By proving Hybrid Queen makes kingdom stronger, not weaker. Father Dominic smiled gently. You're already doing it. Every day you train, every intelligence briefing you contribute to, you demonstrate value. The nights she spent with the king in the war room, studying maps and intelligence reports, learning the patterns of border conflicts and kingdom politics. The mental link between them strengthened, becoming easier to navigate, less intrusive. She began to understand him, the weight of 600 years ruling people who lived and died in what felt like moments to him. The loneliness of command that never ended. The burden of memories that accumulated until past and present blurred together. And he began to understand her. The tactical mind inherited from her father. The visions that were both gift and curse. The determination to matter, to be necessary, to prove her existence had purpose. They did not speak of the 7 brides who had died, but the knowledge hung between them, unspoken reminder that time was not on their side. During the 4th week after transformation, the assassination attempt came. Cassandra was alone in the archives, researching historical border conflicts at Elena's suggestion. Deep in the palace, surrounded by ancient texts and maps, she felt the prickle of awareness that came from enhanced senses detecting threat. Someone was watching. She did not react immediately, did not give away that she had noticed. Instead, she continued reading, tracking the presence through sound and scent. Human, male, armed with metal that smelled like silver. The attack came from behind, blade aimed at the base of her skull where spine met brain. Killing strike, precise and professional. Cassandra dropped and rolled, the blade missing by inches. She came up facing her attacker, a man in nondescript clothing with face covered by dark cloth. But his eyes were visible, cold and calculating. Assassin. He pressed the attack, blade work efficient and deadly. Silver dagger, she noted. Same metal that had killed the border guards, same style of attack. Cassandra had no weapon, had not expected to need one in the archives. She used furniture instead, overturning reading tables to create obstacles, throwing books to disrupt his rhythm. Her enhanced strength made improvised weapons devastating. A thrown chair hit hard enough to crack ribs. A hurled bookend opened a gash on his shoulder. But he was skilled, adapting to her advantages, using silver blade to keep her at distance. One cut would poison her, slow her healing, potentially kill if deep enough. They fought in deadly silence, neither wasting breath on words. This was professional work, soldier versus soldier. Then Cassandra felt the mental link flare with alarm. The king had sensed her danger through their bond. Help was coming. The assassin knew it too. He shifted tactics, going for quick kill instead of careful engagement. Desperate lunge, blade aimed at her heart. Cassandra sidestepped, but not quite fast enough. The silver dagger carved line across her ribs, shallow but burning with poison that spread fire through her veins. She gasped, stumbled. The assassin pressed forward for the finishing strike. Rowan crashed through the door like storm-given form, sword already swinging. The assassin turned to meet new threat, and Cassandra saw her opening. She grabbed his knife arm, using his momentum against him, and slammed his wrist against the edge of a stone table. Bones cracked. The dagger fell. Then the king arrived with Aldrich and 3 guards. The assassin was surrounded. He did not surrender. Instead, he bit down on something hidden in his mouth. Poison, quick and fatal. He collapsed before anyone could stop him, dead within seconds. Cassandra leaned against the wall, hand pressed to her bleeding side, watching professionals die for their causes. "Let me see," the king demanded, pulling her hand away from the wound. The cut was not deep, but silver poisoning was already spreading, black lines radiating from the injury. "I'll live," Cassandra said through gritted teeth, "but he'll die before we can question him about who sent him." Aldrich knelt by the body, searching for identifying marks. No insignia, no marks, professional. But Cassandra's enhanced senses caught something the others missed. Scent of ironwood dye on his clothes. And beneath his mask, a tattoo barely visible on his neck. A raven clutching thorns. "There," she pointed, fighting through pain. "His neck, that symbol." Elena pulled the mask down fully, revealing the tattoo clearly. Thornbringers. Old assassination guild. They were disbanded 200 years ago. "Someone revived them," Cassandra said, "and they're hunting brides." The king's expression went cold with fury that had 6 centuries of experience behind it. "Get her to the healers. Then assemble the war council. This ends now." They carried Cassandra to the medical wing where healers worked to extract the silver poison from her blood. It hurt worse than transformation, pure agony as they cut away contaminated tissue and flushed her system with herbs that burned like liquid fire. But she stayed conscious through it, watching their techniques, learning how silver poisoning worked so she could counter it better next time. Because there would be a next time. The pattern was clear now, brides murdered across generations. Someone wanted the king isolated, wanted to prevent hybrid queens from providing tactical advantage. Someone who had resources to maintain assassination guild across centuries. Someone with patience and planning. Not random violence, strategic warfare. When the healers finished, Cassandra rose from the table despite their protests and made her way to the war room. The council was already assembled, arguing in heated tones that fell silent when she entered. "You should be resting," Father Dominic said with concern. "I'll rest when I'm dead. We have bigger problems." Cassandra moved to the map table, her side aching, but mobility restored. The Thornbringers aren't random assassins. They're systematic, organized, Funded. Someone in the human kingdoms, Aldrich said grimly. Multiple kingdoms, Elena corrected. Bride assassinations spanning multiple generations and multiple source kingdoms. That requires coordination. Cassandra traced the pattern on the map. They don't just want me dead. They want to prevent lasting peace, because peace means no war profits, no justification for military spending, no political advantage in maintaining tension. So we're fighting conspiracy centuries old, Vivian said from her position by the window. How do we counter that? By breaking the pattern, Cassandra replied. By surviving long enough to expose who's funding them. By making them commit resources and make mistakes. The king's mental presence in her mind carried grim determination. They'll try again. Harder. Smarter. Good. Let them come. Each attempt reveals more information. Cassandra looked around the table at the assembled commanders and advisors. We use me as bait, draw them out, force them to expose their network. Absolutely not, the king said aloud. It's sound tactics. It's suicide. It's calculated risk. Cassandra met his gaze. Defensive posture has failed. I survive by being active participant, by hunting the hunters. Aldrich studied her with expression that might have been respect. She has point. Perhaps offensive approach works better. With proper support, Elena added. My network watches. We set trap within trap, make it look like she's vulnerable while actually surrounding her with assets. Father Dominic spoke quietly but with authority. The prophecy said the eighth life would break the pattern. Perhaps this is how. The king looked at Cassandra for a long moment, and through their mental link, she felt his fear and respect and grim acceptance that she was not possession to be protected but weapon to be deployed. We do this my way, he said finally. You're bait, but you're bait with teeth, with backup, with every advantage we can give you. Agreed. They planned through the night, building layers of surveillance and response. Elena's spies would watch the watchers. Aldrich's warriors would maintain hidden presence. The king himself would be close enough to intervene, but not so close as to spook the enemy. And Cassandra would continue her routines, appearing vulnerable while actually being center of carefully constructed trap. As dawn approached and the council finally dispersed, Cassandra remained at the map table, studying the borders and thinking about patterns and conspiracies and the long game being played across generations. The king approached silently, his presence in her mind before his physical arrival. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Yes, I do. Because if I don't, the pattern continues. Another generation, another bride, another murder. It ends with me, one way or another. I've watched you die 7 times. I'm not eager to see it again. Cassandra turned to face him. Then help me make sure this time is different. Fight with me, not for me. Trust that I'm weapon you transformed me into. His hand touched her shoulder, grip firm and warm. I do trust you. That's what terrifies me. Through their bond, she felt the depth of his fear, not for himself but for her, for the hybrid queen he had created, who was supposed to be tool but had become something more complicated. Terror is just tactical awareness of risk, she said. Channel it, use it, win. The king smiled, grim and determined. You really are Thornwell's daughter. To the end, whatever that end might be. The trap required weeks to set properly. Elena's spies needed time to identify all Thornbringer agents in the city. Aldrich's warriors needed positioning that appeared routine while actually creating layered defensive network. And Cassandra needed to establish patterns that made her seem vulnerable while actually being constantly protected. She settled into routines that looked careless, morning walks in the palace gardens, alone except for distant guards. Afternoon research in the archives, isolated among ancient texts. Evening meetings in the war room, approaching through corridors that offered ambush opportunities. Each routine was calculated risk, bait carefully presented to enemies who had killed 7 times before. And each day, border tensions escalated. The Eastern Kingdoms continued their buildup, no longer hiding their intent. 15,000 troops massed across 3 fronts, their commanders coordinating movements that spoke of unified planning. This was not random aggression. This was orchestrated campaign. In the war room, Cassandra studied reconnaissance reports with growing certainty. They're waiting for something, she said, tracing troop positions on the map. They have numbers advantage, but they're not attacking. Why? Waiting for signal from inside Iron Peak, Elena suggested. Confirmation that you're dead, perhaps, or that the king is distracted. Aldrich pointed to the western mountains. Your vision showed attack from the pass, but we've fortified there. If they come that way, we're ready. Unless the vision was misdirection, Vivian said from her position by the window. "Show you one threat while the real danger comes from elsewhere." Cassandra considered this, letting her enhanced mind work through possibilities. Visions were intelligence, not prophecy. They showed probable futures based on current patterns, but patterns could change. "We need better intelligence on their command structure," she decided. "Who's coordinating 3 kingdoms? That level of cooperation doesn't happen without strong leadership." "Working on it," Elena replied, "but their operational security is excellent, professional." Too professional for normal military campaign. This had hallmarks of something else, something familiar. That night, Cassandra induced a vision deliberately, despite the cost. She needed to see deeper, understand the pattern fully. The pain came first, always. White-hot agony behind her eyes as present and future blurred together. Then images, fragmentary and chaotic. Silver weapons in torchlight, the raven and thorns, larger now, banner flying over army camp. And a face, old and scarred, weathered by decades of war and grief. Human face, military bearing, eyes that held weight of old losses. The vision sharpened. She saw insignia on his armor, captain's rank, and beneath it, names she recognized from Elena's files. Torres. The vision released her and she gasped, steadying herself against the table. The king was beside her instantly, hand on her shoulder, concern flowing through their mental bond. "What did you see?" "The Eastern commander, Captain Torres. Elena mentioned him. His daughter was bride number 4, Isabeau. He supposedly died 50 years ago." Elena's expression went sharp with interest. "Body never recovered. We assumed he died in border skirmish." "What if he didn't die?" Cassandra's mind raced, connecting fragments into pattern. "What if he's been alive all this time, leading the Thornbringers?" Father Dominic pulled ancient records, fingers running down lists of names and dates. Isabeau Torres, lasted 6 months after claiming. Assassinated with silver dagger, raven and thorn's signature. The pattern clicked into place with horrible clarity. "He blames you," Cassandra said to the king. "His daughter died under your protection. He went rogue, discovered Thornbringer conspiracy, and instead of exposing them, he joined them." "Revenge," Aldrich said quietly. "Kill every bride the king claims. Make him suffer the same loss repeatedly." Not just revenge, strategy. Cassandra traced the map, seeing the decades-long campaign. "Torres knows how you think, how Iron Peak operates. He's been sabotaging alliances for 50 years, keeping the kingdoms isolated, preventing the peace his daughter died trying to build." The king's presence in her mind was cold fury and old grief combined. "Torres was my father's friend. They fought together for decades. If he's alive, if he's behind this, then we can use it," Cassandra interrupted. "Personal vendetta makes people emotional. Emotional enemies make mistakes." "Or it makes them more dangerous," Vivian countered. "Both can be true." The mental link flared with the king's grim determination. Through their bond, she felt his decision forming. "We end this, now, before they attack." His voice carried 6 centuries of command. "Aldrich, mobilize the border forces. Elena, activate all intelligence assets. We move against their positions before they're ready." "Preemptive strike," Aldrich said with approval. "Good. Better to fight on our terms." They planned through the night, building operation that combined Cassandra's visions with Elena's intelligence and Aldrich's military expertise. Strike forces would hit supply lines, saboteurs would target their siege weapons, and at the center of it all, a gambit. Cassandra would go to Torres under flag of parley, alone, bait and negotiator combined. "It's insane," Rowan protested when she heard the plan. "He'll kill you the moment you're within reach." "Possibly, but he'll also want to talk first, to explain, to justify." Cassandra checked her weapons, knife and sword both, though she expected neither would matter if Torres truly wanted her dead. Men who kill for ideology always want their victims to understand why. "And you'll use that time for what?" Vivian asked. "Convince him to surrender?" "I'll use it to understand his network, his goals, his weaknesses. Every moment he's talking is a moment Elena's spies are mapping his forces." The king was silent, his mental presence heavy with conflict. She felt his desire to protect her warring with understanding that she was right. Torres would not negotiate with the king he blamed, but he might talk to the bride who reminded him of his daughter. "You're not going alone," he said finally. "I'll be close enough to intervene. Not too close. If he senses trap, he'll withdraw and we'll learn nothing." Cassandra met his gaze. Trust that I'm weapon you made me. I trust you, that's the problem. 3 days later, Cassandra rode out under flag of parley toward the Eastern Army's forward position. Alone, as the terms demanded. Unarmed, as honor required. Wearing simple traveling clothes that held no armor but carried hidden knife in her boot. The mental link stretched thin with distance but held. The king's presence in her mind was steady anchor, reminder that she was not truly alone. The eastern camp sprawled across the valley, 15,000 troops organized with military precision, siege engines positioned for assault, supply lines established, defensive perimeter that spoke of professional command. Guards stopped her at the boundary, searched her thoroughly, found and confiscated her hidden knife. She let them, playing the role of defenseless emissary. They led her through camp to command tent at the center. Soldiers watched her pass with mixture of curiosity and hostility. The hybrid queen walking into enemy territory, either brave or suicidal. Inside the tent stood the man from her vision, older than she expected, weathered by 85 years of life and 50 years of war. But his eyes were sharp, tactical mind still operating despite aged flesh. Captain Torres regarded her with expression she could not read. Cassandra Thornwell, bride number 8. I wondered if you'd come. His voice was rough, worn by decades of command. You look like her. Not exactly, but enough. Like Isabeau. You've done your research. I've had help. Cassandra kept her posture relaxed, non-threatening. Your daughter was murdered 50 years ago. Silver dagger through the heart. Thornbringer assassination. Torres's face tightened. The Lycans killed her. The Thornbringers killed her. I've seen the evidence. Guild ledgers listing her as target 4. Payment from 3 human kingdoms who wanted the alliance broken. Lies. Truth. Uncomfortable truth that's easier to reject than accept. Cassandra took a calculated risk, stepping closer. Your daughter died fighting for peace. You're fighting for the people who murdered her. Torres's hand moved toward his sword, then stopped. You don't know what you're talking about. I know grief makes us stupid. Makes us believe comfortable lies rather than painful truths. Her voice softened. I know what it's like to lose a parent to war's slow grind. My father died from wounds he got fighting your kind. Took 15 years, but Black Ridge Pass killed him just as surely as if he'd died on the field. Thornwell. Recognition flickered in Torres's eyes. The colonel who nearly won. Nearly isn't good enough. He died anyway. Left me alone in village that feared me. Cassandra met his gaze steadily. I could hate Lycans for that. Could spend my life seeking revenge. Instead, I chose different path. Chose to finish what my father started. Build the peace he died for. And you think I'll do the same? Just forgive and forget? I think you're a soldier who understands duty and honor. I think you've spent 50 years fighting the wrong enemy because grief demanded target and Lycans were convenient. She gestured toward the tent flap, indicating the army beyond. But look what you've built. 3 kingdoms coordinated, Thornbringer network revived, decades of planning. That's not revenge, that's strategy. Torres studied her, military mind assessing threat and opportunity. What do you want? I want you to know the truth before more people die for lies. Cassandra pulled documents from inside her shirt, records Elena had provided. Thornbringer ledgers, payment records, Isabeau's assassination contract, signed by officials from her own kingdom. She spread them on the command table. Torres approached slowly, suspicion and curiosity warring on his face. He read, and as he read, something in his expression crumbled. No, the word was barely whisper. They told me Lycans killed her, that the king's curse. The curse is assassination pattern, systematic murder designed to keep the king isolated and weak. Your daughter was victim of political warfare, not supernatural doom. Torres's hands shook as he held the documents. 85 years old, soldier who had seen countless battles, and he was breaking like green recruit. I killed them. All of them. 7 brides, 7 lives. I thought I was avenging Isabeau. I thought... He collapsed into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his years. Gods, what have I done? Cassandra felt pity despite herself. This was not monster, but broken man who had made terrible choices in service to grief. You can still finish what Isabeau started, she said quietly. Expose the kingdoms funding the Thornbringers. End the cycle. Die like your daughter did, fighting for peace instead of revenge. They'll kill me. Probably. But you'll die with honor restored, and maybe that matters. Torres looked up at her. Old soldier seeing younger soldier who understood the weight of choice. You remind me of her. Not in looks, but in bearing. She had that same certainty. Then honor her memory properly. Help me survive what killed her. Long silence held, broken only by sounds of military camp beyond the tent. Then Torres straightened, decision made. I can give you intelligence, commander positions, weak points in their formation, supply routes. But I can't stop the attack. I gave the order days ago. 3 kingdoms committed 15,000 troops. They won't withdraw on my word alone. Then we fight, but with the advantage of knowing their plans. Torres began talking, providing detailed intelligence that would have taken Elena months to gather. Cassandra absorbed it all, her enhanced mind recording every detail, transmitting key points through mental link to the king. She felt his presence sharpen with each new piece of information. Felt Aldrich and Elena receiving updates through him, adjusting their defensive plans in real time. The trap within trap was working. But then alarm bells rang through the camp. Shouts, the sound of steel being drawn. Torres stood sharply, decades of military reflex overriding age. What's happening? A lieutenant burst into the tent. Sir, the kingdoms are attacking. Without your signal, they're advancing now. Torres's face went pale. I ordered them to wait for confirmation. They're not waiting. The assault has begun. Cassandra felt the mental link surge with alarm. The king's presence in her mind was sudden, sharp focus. It started. Get out of there. But before she could move, the tent flap opened again, and different figure entered. Younger, harder, wearing armor marked with raven and thorns. Thornbringer commander, ranking higher than Torres. His presence radiated authority and cold calculation. Captain Torres has been compromised, the man said calmly. He will be detained. The hybrid dies now. The assault continues as planned. 3 guards entered behind him, silver weapons drawn. Torres moved between them and Cassandra. Stand down. She's under flag of parley. Parley is a convenience we no longer need, the Thornbringer commander gestured. Take them both. Cassandra assessed the situation with tactical clarity born of training and transformation. 4 armed enemies. She was unarmed. Torres was old and unarmored. The tent offered limited cover. Math was not in her favor. But math was not the only factor. She felt the king's presence surging through the mental link, felt him mobilizing forces, racing toward her position. Minutes away, maybe less if he transformed and ran at full Lycan speed. She needed to survive long enough for rescue. Torres drew his sword with surprising speed for 85 years. You want her? You go through me. Gladly. The Thornbringer commander nodded to his guards. Kill the traitor first. They attacked in coordinated rush. Torres met them with skill born of 6 decades of war, blade work still precise despite aged muscles. But he was 1 against 3, and they were younger, faster, ruthless. Cassandra did not wait to be next victim. She grabbed a camp stool and threw it at the nearest guard, disrupting his attack on Torres. Then she dove for the command table, scattering maps and documents, looking for anything that could serve as weapon. Her hand closed on a letter opener, slim blade meant for paper but sharp enough. Not ideal, but sufficient. The Thornbringer commander came at her directly, silver dagger in hand. Professional killer, experienced and confident. Cassandra let her transformation take over, enhanced reflexes and strength flooding her system. She met his attack not with strength, but with technique, redirecting his blade and driving the letter opener toward his throat. He blocked, twisted, countered. They fought in deadly silence, each move calculated to kill. Torres was struggling, blood on his uniform from multiple cuts. The guards were wearing him down through attrition. Through the mental link, Cassandra felt the king getting closer, felt Rowan and Aldrich with him, the strike force racing to intervene. She just needed seconds more. The Thornbringer commander scored hit, silver blade opening gash across her shoulder. Pain and poison flooded her system, slowing her reflexes. He pressed the advantage, going for killing strike. Then Torres, bleeding and battered, drove his sword through the back of one guard and turned the momentum into throw that sent another sprawling. The distraction cost him. The third guard's blade found his side deep and lethal. Torres collapsed, but kept fighting from the ground, using last reserves to create chaos that gave Cassandra opening. She took it, drove the letter opener into the Thornbringer commander's exposed armpit where armor did not protect. Not deep enough to kill, but enough to disable his knife arm. Then the tent wall exploded inward as the king arrived in full Lycan form, massive and terrible, with Rowan and Aldrich flanking him. The fight ended in seconds. 2 guards dead, 1 fleeing, Thornbringer commander pinned under the king's claws. Cassandra staggered, silver poisoning spreading through her system. The king shifted back to human form and caught her before she fell. "Stubborn," he said, but relief flooded through their bond. "Effective," she corrected, then looked toward Torres. The old captain lay in spreading pool of his own blood, the wound in his side clearly mortal. Cassandra pulled away from the king and knelt beside him. "That was foolish," she said quietly. Torres smiled, blood on his teeth. "I'm 85. Been living on borrowed time for decades anyway. Better to die meaning something than fade from age." Isabeau would be proud. "You think so?" "I know so. You chose right side in the end. That matters." Torres's hand found hers, grip weak but determined. "Stop them. The kingdoms, the Thornbringers, all of it. Finish what my daughter started." "I will." He died with something like peace on his weathered face. Cassandra closed his eyes and stood, swaying slightly from poison and exhaustion. The battle still raged beyond the tent, 15,000 troops attacking Iron Peak positions, war in full fury. "Can you fight?" the king asked, supporting her weight. "I can coordinate. Get me to command position." They moved through chaos of military engagement, Lycan forces engaging human armies across 3 fronts. The intelligence Torres had provided was already being exploited. Aldrich's warriors hit weak points in enemy formations. Elena's saboteurs destroyed siege engines before they could be deployed. Cassandra took position in field command post, using mental link with the king to provide real-time tactical coordination. Her enhanced mind processed battlefield information faster than any messenger could deliver it, seeing patterns and opportunities. "Eastern flank is overextended," she reported through the link. "Hit them there, fold them back into center." The king relayed orders. Warriors shifted. The eastern flank collapsed under coordinated assault. "Northern supply line is vulnerable. 3 wagons of silver weapons minimally guarded." Rowan's strike team hit the wagons, destroying the ammunition that would have made the battle far bloodier. "Western forces are hesitating. Their commander is uncertain. Press them now before they commit." Aldrich led charge that broke Western cohesion, sending that entire force into retreat. Hour by hour, using intelligence and coordination, they dismantled the invasion. Not through superior numbers or strength, but through superior information and tactics. By sunset, the battle was won. 8,000 enemy troops surrendered. 4,000 retreated in organized withdrawal. 3,000 lay dead or dying on field that would be remembered. Cassandra collapsed in the command tent as healers worked to purge silver from her system. The pain was familiar now, almost routine. She endured it with soldiers' patience. The king sat beside her, his presence in her mind exhausted but victorious. "You won this," he said aloud. "Your intelligence, your coordination. We won this, together." "Together," he agreed. The captured Thornbringer commander was brought before them in chains. Elena had extracted preliminary intelligence through methods Cassandra chose not to examine too closely. "He's confirmed Torres's information," Elena reported. "The Thornbringers have 12 active chapters across the human kingdoms. This was just one operation. Others are already planning." "Then we dismantle them systematically," Cassandra said, pushing past pain to focus. "Use what we learned here. Expose their funding sources. Turn their own secrecy against them." Over the following months, as her body healed and diplomatic negotiations began with the defeated kingdoms, Cassandra worked with Elena to build comprehensive intelligence operation. They exposed funding sources, arrested operatives, dismantled infrastructure. The kingdoms, faced with evidence of conspiracy that had manipulated them into war, were forced to negotiate genuine peace. But more importantly, they negotiated change. Cassandra proposed radical reformation of the bride tribute system, not elimination, but transformation. Voluntary exchange programs, diplomatic rotations, cultural exchanges that built understanding rather than reinforcing fear. "You're dismantling centuries of tradition," Vivian protested during council meeting. "I'm dismantling centuries of failure," Cassandra corrected. "The old system doesn't work. We try something new or wait for bride number 9 to die the same way." The vote was close, but Father Dominic's support tipped the balance. The reforms passed. Within months, the first voluntary exchanges began. Human scholars studying Lycan history, Lycan merchants trading in human cities, slow integration that built bridges instead of maintaining walls. Vivienne, surprisingly, became advocate for the changes. She established sanctuary for half-breeds, those caught between worlds, gave them place and purpose. "You were right," she told Cassandra during inspection of the sanctuary. Change was necessary. I just needed to see it working. We're still building it. Will take generations to fully realize. Then we'd better start building well. 1 year after the claiming, Cassandra stood with the king on the palace balcony overlooking Iron Peak. The city below bustled with life that included humans now, walking streets without fear, trading goods and knowledge. The mental link between them hummed with comfortable familiarity. Year of constant connection had taught them to navigate the bond without conscious effort. She felt his thoughts as extension of her own, and he felt hers. Partnership forged in combat and maintained through shared purpose. What happens now? He asked. Now we keep building, expand the exchange programs, dismantle more Thornbringer chapters, eventually make war between our peoples impossible. Ambitious. Necessary. He smiled. 6 centuries of experience recognizing kindred spirit. You've changed things more in 1 year than I changed in 600. You gave me the platform and the protection to survive long enough to matter. I just used them. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their city adapt and grow. Not romantic ending, but something perhaps more valuable. Strategic partnership between 2 minds that understood the weight of command and the burden of long campaigns. Father Dominic found them there as evening fell. The council is pleased with the reforms, he reported. First Joint Military Academy class begins next month. 200 human recruits, 200 Lycan, training together. Shared hardship builds bonds better than any treaty, Cassandra said. Your father would have liked you, Dominic told her. The colonel, I mean. I met him once. Practical man who valued results over rhetoric, like you. I hope I honor his memory by finishing what he started. The priest smiled. The prophecy said the 8th life would break the pattern, until the unwanted one refuses to choose, embracing both worlds without shame. Every claimed bride will be torn between 2 halves until it destroys her. You never mentioned this prophecy before, Cassandra said sharply. Would it have changed anything? The king asked. She considered. No, I chose my path regardless. Perhaps they didn't predict, Dominic said. Perhaps they simply understood that given choice between isolation and integration, some will always choose the harder path. You were simply first bride with temperament and training to succeed. As Dominic departed, Cassandra remained at the balcony, thinking about choices and patterns and the strange trajectory that had brought her from unwanted daughter to hybrid queen, from village madwoman to strategic asset, from isolation to partnership. Regrets? The king asked quietly. None, you? Only that it took 8 lifetimes to find a bride who'd fight alongside me instead of needing protection. Speaking of which, Elena reports another Thornbringer chapter identified in the western provinces. Then we plan operation to dismantle it. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, she agreed. The stars emerged above Iron Peak as night settled over the kingdom, slowly transforming from fortress to true civilization. In the distance, lights from human settlements mixed with Lycan strongholds, creating constellation of cooperation where once had been only division. Not perfect, not finished, but building towards something better. Cassandra felt the presence of the king beside her, solid and certain. Felt the potential of the future they were constructing together. Felt the weight of her father's lessons echoing through every choice. Together they stood watch over their kingdom as darkness fell and new day waited beyond the horizon. Partners in purpose, soldiers in service to peace, 2 minds that understood the weight of command and the necessity of hard choices. The 8th bride had survived. The pattern was broken. The war continued, but they fought it with eyes open and strategy sharp. Victory enough. The end.